Hey, how's it going? This is Josh, and I'm doing something a bit not related to what I've been posting recently with rebar testing. Today's the 3rd. I'm making this a little bit in advance because I have stuff to do next week and won't be able to do more rebar testing or just game testing in general. And I've been watching a lot of Zach's Tech Turf about, his making computers, specifically the best performance per dollar computers. And I thought it was really interesting because for the most part, I agree with a lot of the stuff he does. But there's a couple examples of things I don't agree with. Not that they're bad choices, but they're not optimal. So I have a couple selections here of stuff that I think would be the best, like $750 streaming PC, because I think at this point in computers in general, I mean, if you look hard enough, you can obviously min-max super hard for performance per dollar. I mean, I'm not a huge aesthetics guy. Aesthetics are nice, but like I don't need braided cables. I don't use them in my personal computer. Do they look nice? Sure, but I don't think they're all too necessary. So I want to make a pure performance per dollar like system like he does, but have 4 variations depending on if you want to go completely brand new, if you want to go used, and if you're partial to either Intel, AMD, or Nvidia. So, so I have 4 computers, like 4 parts lists I have, and the most important thing is it has to be a streaming computer. Now, technically, any graphics card can stream, whatever. That's not what I mean. I mean, actually, first, good streaming quality and minimal performance loss while streaming. And there's really only 2 ways of actually doing that: integrated graphics on Intel CPUs, or having a RTX 20 and newer NVIDIA card. I'm not sure with RX 9000 1 week away what that's going to look like, so this is made before them. It's possible it would do better, but I'm not quite sure. But this is what I have cooked up. So for this first computer, i5 12400 and an RX 7600. I searched long and hard because, I mean, buying new NVIDIA right now is just on the low end. It's just not possible. So like and also I'm looking for quality here. So a 3056 gig, fucking trash. Get it out of here. Not something I'm interested in, but I had it anyway. So my go-to normally, if I show you what the thought process was, my go-to normally is, if it's possible. No, I'm getting rid of the 3050 because it's stupid. If it's possible, I like to, for streaming computers, have either an Intel CPU with AMD GPU, because it normally ends up being more cost efficient, or if you go with an AMD CPU, you have to go with an NVIDIA graphics card. So I was looking here, and I want, the best performance per dollar here. And like that, so $750 after taxes is what I was looking for. So I said like 7% sales tax. So you're looking at like $700 budget. So if you were really constrained, you could go with the 6600. But I'm like, well, you could go. A lot of people, if you want to make the most of it, $10 over budget to get this for a 7600. Like $10 over budget is worth it. I saw 2. Hold on, I gotta bring this back. So, yeah, $10 over budget is worth it. So let me continue. So, this was like the cheapest, not garbage looking LGA 1700 board. There were some really bad like H610s and B660 boards I was not interested in. So this HX70 looked good enough USB-C, which wasn't a requirement, but nice if possible. And it said it has 9 power phases. I'm not quite sure if those are actually 9 or if it's like 7, like a 6 plus 3 plus 1 or 7 plus 2. Doesn't really matter. As long if it's at least a 6 phase for your actual CPU, that's plenty good, especially for a 12400. That's plenty good. And for the RAM kit here, I have this Clev Bolt X kit. I mean, it's 3600 CL18, perfectly fine. The reason we go with this one is Clev is a subsidiary or distributor. I'm not sure what they actually are, but Hynix owns them. And I know for a fact that this should have either dual rank CJR or DJR, which is among the best DDR4 chips you can buy for overclocking. And if not, if you're not interested in overclocking, you could still keep this because 3600 CL18 is good. Or if you wanted to save money and actually be within budget, you could shave off. So that was $51. You could shave off $5 and get this. And if you just do XMP, that's fine. But me personally, I think for $4 for much better overclocking, I think is worth it. I just picked the cheapest PCIe 3 NVMe drive. There's like some SATA SSDs. They're like $3-4 cheaper. It's like $4-5 for a Gen 4 1TB NVMe. It's really up to you. Again, if you are really constrained, if you're dead set on it has to be 750, then you could work around this and your RAM, and you could change these two, get fundamentally the same performance, save like $10 total maybe. Case-wise, cases, at least on PC Part Picker, this is like the cheapest. There's one case cheaper than this that's also a fish tank that's like $2 cheaper. I don't really care. You could spend more on a case if you really wanted to. This seemed like it was good enough. I helped a buddy build in this case, and it was perfectly fine. He had a lot of cable management space, so it was good enough for me. And I chose this MSI 650 Bronze because I always go whatever this says. I just add 50% to have plenty of headroom. Now you could also shave off a few dollars with your power supply. If you undervolted, like the 7600 takes like 170 watts ish. You could undervolt that to make it like 150. You could probably go down to like a 550 if you really had to constrain yourself. But I think overall, with a few better choices, you could definitely make this exactly 700. But I think going over $8 is worth the performance uplift. And we have fundamentally the same computer with AMD here, but just worse in terms of performance, just all across the board. Because for people who do overclocking on on Intel is much better in terms of actual performance gain, because you can mess with refresh interval while you can't on Ryzen, or at least before AM5, which drastically makes the 12400 outperform the 5600 if you know what you're doing. Like the best 5600s with, an optimal 3800 CL16 or CL14 kit, or like tight RAM timings. Like I have a video about what I run. I have dual rank CJR. Like this is the fastest that this kit is ever going to run. Like this is minimized basically. And if you had a 5600 running this, I mean, it'd perform great. But if you had these timings with, where's refresh interval? With refresh interval maxed out on Intel, it wouldn't even be close. So because of that, memory overclocking matters more on on Ryzen because of how latency starved it is. But there's some sacrifices have to be made because you need an NVIDIA graphics card. I mean, like I showed earlier with the 7600, like it's either buy a 3060 6 gig, which is just horrendous, buy a 3060 8 gig, which still loses to a 2060, which is also horrendous. Like, why even make it? Or spend $300 on a 2060, which is crazy. So, like, it's straight up, like, spend $250 on a 3060 8 gig, which is like 10% slower, or buy a 2060. Obviously, looking at this price, and you miss out on USB-C, you get NVIDIA, but, I mean, at least buying new with what I could muster, I mean, you spend more for worse performance in every regard. Like, equally or worse CPU performance, no USB-C, slower graphics card. Like, this is just the better way, for sure. Now, if you're dedicated to not Intel for some reason, or you're like, oh, if you still believe that AMD's drivers are bad, which isn't really the case anymore, that sure, you could go with this, but it's just not as good. And believe me, I really tried. It's just not as good. Now, let's get on to more of the meat and potatoes here. For the exact same price as this, 5700X in a 2080. Now, I put in the work. All right, I put in the work to make this happen. Look at this. If you don't like AliExpress, then you could swap out the 5700X with the 5600X, because if you're dedicated to new, you could spend the extra $20 here. Actually, I mean, you could swap out the 5700X and the cooler with the 5600X with the stock cooler and save some money and get new. But if you're looking for the best performance here, 5700X for $100 is hard to argue with. Now, I also looked on eBay, and it's just not worth it on eBay. It's just not worth it. I mean, you're looking $140 for it, just not worth it. So basically the same computer as this, but now we have USB-C. Slightly faster, like 100 megahertz faster, but now we have 8 cores instead of 6, a better USB-C motherboard, and a significantly faster graphics card. For less. You love to see it. I mean, this right here was basically the computer I had before I upgraded. I had a 5800X and a 2080, and for 1080p, like this is plenty good. For 750, I wish I could have built this computer for 750 back when I made it. I probably spent, in terms of when I bought it, like double that for this computer, which is crazy because building this for 750 is actually amazing. Like that's hard. That's really hard to beat. And I already talked about a lot of this stuff. I already talked about the RAM, so we can move on. Now, if you really were dedicated, we essentially have, we have these two PCs here, give or take, are equal in terms of performance. So, I couldn't find a higher performance AMD card for this price. Like 36 or NVIDIA, like a 3060 Ti costs more. 3070 obviously costs more. So like at least where I was, this is the going ratio. Now, like I said, an optimal 12400 beats out a 5600 and 5600X, and it also beats out a 5700X as long as it doesn't use more than 8 cores. Now, if it's a game that actually is well optimized, like Doom Eternal, for example, a 5700X might beat out a 12400. I'm not entirely sure, because no one no one actually does RAM overclocking properly. It upsets me greatly because I have no idea. Because everyone's just like, oh, I enabled XMP and that's it. When there's so much more performance left on the table. Regardless, these two, if you were building it and you plug it in, enable XMP and call it a day, this is faster. Undoubtedly, this is faster. But if you maximize each of these out, I'm pretty sure the 12400 wins. And then if you were streaming, I'm not quite sure if it'd be more optimal to use integrated graphics or NVENC. I think using integrated graphics and completely freeing up the GPU would probably be better. That's about it. I mean, these are the eBay listings I was looking at. Oh, I should have mentioned, for all of eBay, I have it as buy it now and returns accepted, because, I mean, that is less likely you are to get hosed and get a non-functioning product. So that goes for all of them, like this. I mean, eBay refurbished, 10,000 stars. Great price, like, hard to argue with. And I had the same idea. So this 12400 is 119. You could, if we go back here, you could get a 12400 brand new for basically the same price, but with the stock Intel cooler. So if you're like, oh no, I want a brand new CPU, I don't want to run the risk, then you could get the same price, just with slightly worse cooling performance. And the last thing is this, because if you're gonna spend the time to make this, and you get a decent quality board, you want the ability to to upgrade in the future eventually. So like this will further increase temperature or lower temperature, and then you get like if you have this, you probably wouldn't want to go to like a 14700K or anything if you're actually gonna like get the most out of the platform, unless you did and then change the cooler out, which is possible. But yeah, that is about it. Because I mean, like I said, I'm not gonna buy this. I have a plan. My computer's good, and to spend $750 on a build for no return, like YouTube revenue wise, would be stupid. And my area is not good for selling computers. But regardless, if you want to use this as a template of some sort, I had an idea of like doing like 500, 750, and 1,000, but I thought 750 was the most reasonable first. I'm not sure how well this video is gonna do. Not like it really matters, I get like 100 views of video best, so who the fuck cares? But if this helps you in any meaningful way, happy to help. That's about it.